everybody, and welcome to Boston Balling. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut. Hope everybody's having a great week. It's almost Friday. You are almost there. Props to it being almost the weekend, and we're officially in February. For whatever reason, January felt like such a drag this year. This time of year is always so tough. Just being cold and not being able to be outside doing things. But we're in February, which means it's almost baseball season, which also means it's getting closer to spring. So that's all promising. I'm excited to bring you another episode of the show today. I actually have a fantastic guest with me on this episode. She's done so many different things in the sports world, now works at NESN as a reporter and host for them. Meredith Gorman, how are you doing?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm good, enjoying this downtime without the Patriots in the playoffs, and the rest of the
Yeah.
world is keeping me busy.
I know, right? Isn't that weird? It's just been such a weird time for the Patriots. And, it's going to get even weirder now because we're officially fully out of the Belichick era of Patriots football. And so there's going to be a lot of change for that team coming up here.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's an entirely new era for this Patriots team, and the change could be good. We'll see. He's still filling. Gerard Mayo's still filling out his coaching staff, but I'm excited to see what he'll do there. And it's crazy when you think about the fact that he's only 37.
Yeah, I know, right? And he's just been with the Patriots organization for so long. So, part of me, likes that because I'm like, he definitely understands the Patriot way and he's kind of seen a lot of the struggles that this team has been through the last few years post Brady. But he's also seen the very high times of the Patriots during the Brady Belichick era. And I feel like this is a good opportunity for him to really come in and kind of form a new identity for this team.
100%. I think he'll take some of the things that he learned from Bill Belichick as a player and while he was working as a coach under him and bring it in and also create his own culture while he's at it. But I do know one thing, like, from the guys that I've talked to on that team, the guys really love it. And so most, if not all, of the Patriots are thrilled to have him being named head coach.
See, that's a good sign too, because you definitely want a coach who has the respect of the locker room, because that makes a huge difference when it comes to the season. And especially since he's been around them, he really knows these guys. And bringing in somebody from the outside could be a challenge because they have to know and learn these guys and their work styles and how they go together. And he's just seen these guys and been around them. So he already has that going for him from a coaching standpoint.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the things that stuck with me from his introductory press conference, and then I interviewed him later in that day after he was announced head coach, and he said he's not really trying to dismantle the way that the organization's been run, like, completely. He is all for building people up within the organization and, like, developing people, which I think is great. And he's going to make things his own with its own twist. But I liked it rather than searching externally for everything right off the bat. Like, he's looking at the people that have come up within the organization who, might deserve an opportunity just as much as anybody else.
Yeah, I really like that about him. He seems to have faith in some of these guys who have been around and is really seeming to give them a shot and see kind of how that goes. And yes, he is bringing some people in from the outside, and you do need that too, because sometimes having a new perspective on certain aspects about how things are going is definitely a good thing. But I like that he's not doing that for everybody.
100%, 100%. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see who he ends up bringing in as offensive coordinator, but I'm excited to see the direction the team's going in.
Yeah, so would you say you like so far just who he's brought in to be on his coaching staff, to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that who he brings in as offensive coordinator will be really telling. What he ends up doing with Mac Jones will be really telling. There's been so many different reports about Jones' future in New England, but if the reports about he and Belichick, butting heads a bit are true, then maybe with Gerard Mayo as new head coach, he'll get another second chance in New England. We'll see. But I think if they end up bringing in Nick Haley, for example, who's with the Rams right now as offensive coordinator, he spent time in New England as an assistant coach for a while. that could be good because he just went and coached under Sean McVay, can bring that style of coaching in, but he kind of came up with Belichick. So it's like a bit of a merging of different coaching styles that could be good for the organization with this new way that they want to, change things. So we'll see. I have faith in how things are going. It seems like they're going to stick with Matt Groh and Elliot Wolf in terms of the general manager duties. I don't know if they're going to keep them split or how it's going, but they're trying not to shake things up too much, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some things, comfortability is good, especially for somebody like Mayo, because with him, moving into a head coaching role, which is something that he doesn't have the experience with, having some comfortability and familiarity there around him is definitely something that I'm sure will help make him feel more comfortable as he kind of transitions into this role.
100%. And I think the fact that he's been around the organization, he's seen, even though he wasn't working with the offense, he's seen the changes that the offense has dealt with, three different offensive coordinators in 3 years and the stuff that went on in the locker room that we may not have even heard of. So I think going forward as a coach, being able to keep that knowledge in one hand and hopefully, I guess you would say, fix or fill in some of the cracks that may have appeared in the last couple of years when things weren't going as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, things were definitely not going very well for this Patriots team, especially on offense. So, like you said, whoever he brings in for offensive coordinator is going to be so important and really set the tone for this team moving forward. And, a lot of people have mixed feelings on Mac Jones, and I think he kind of got the short end of the stick when he came here, like, because when they drafted him, there was a lot of hype surrounding Mac. I mean, coming off a national championship, coming out of a program in Alabama that's had so much success. And then he comes here, and his rookie season was pretty good. I mean, I think people sometimes forget that his rookie year went to the playoffs. And he looked pretty good then, but the reality at the end of the day is I never felt like he had all the right kinds of weapons around him to be able to succeed. And I don't really feel like Belichick surrounded him with the guys necessary and the talent necessary to allow him to really grow and develop here. So, yes, there are certain things about Mac that were kind of on him, but I feel like overall, the organization never really put him in the best spot to succeed. And I think it was pretty blatant in his visible frustration during games.
Absolutely. And I think it's a hard situation to balance as a player, right? Because especially when you're being coached by Bill Belichick and in that organization, it's a matter of respect. You don't want to disrespect your coaches and this and that, but you can't blame Mac for feeling disappointed by the way things went. And I do hope he gets a second chance and that he makes the most of it because from the outside, you can see a guy who's working hard, trying his best, and sometimes it's a matter of just being dealt a bad hand and then kind of things spiraling from there. But the other thing I think that can benefit Mac is just regaining his confidence because I think over and over when you're facing adversity through a season and people from the outside are saying, "Oh, he's not the guy. Oh, he's had another terrible game." Like as much as you try to block out the outside noise, I think mentally it does affect most people.
Yeah, especially if you're playing in an environment like New England. Obviously, as we know, it's a very intense environment to play in. The fan base is used to winning and used to success now. And being brought into a situation where you have to try to follow somebody like Tom Brady, who had this legacy with the Patriots for so long, and then obviously, having their little bridge guy and Cam Newton, and then bringing in Mac as kind of what you thought was going to be the future. How do you follow somebody like that and have people expect immediate success from you right away? There was just all of this added pressure on him to begin with for being that guy. And I think people were getting a little bit too impatient too quickly with Mac, and obviously his offensive line was not really the best either. He didn't have a lot of time to throw the ball, and who was he really able to throw the ball to? So I kind of felt like, from the standpoint of the offensive line and the receiving core in particular, those are two areas that are still glaring weaknesses for the Patriots right now that I feel like they definitely need to address this offseason.
100%. I think between free agency and the upcoming NFL draft, hopefully they'll be able to address some of those issues. Again, when Gerard Mayo was asked about who he's planning on taking with that third overall pick in the draft, he said, um, we'll go for the best available player. But from what I've been hearing and from how he made it seem, I think they'll draft a quarterback.
You do think so? Because there's been questions surrounding, like, do they use that pick on a quarterback, or if they don't feel confident enough in a quarterback, do they use it to draft a different position, or do they draft out of the pick, like, or do they trade out of the pick and get more picks later on? Because that's how the Patriots have sometimes operated in the past. Like, Belichick was the king of, like, trading down.
Right.
But I was saying, this is one of the best draft picks that they've had in a long time. And so I'm utilizing that pick if I have it. And the Patriots definitely could benefit from using that pick on an offensive player, but you definitely feel like there's a chance it's a quarterback that they use it on.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. And I think when you have a pick like that, and like you said, it's been a long time since the Patriots have picked in that spot. You almost have to find a franchise defining player, and there's a lot of pressure on you to make the right pick when you're picking at that spot, because you've seen it time and time again. I mean, if either the guy ends up working out and he is a franchise player, franchise quarterback for your team, or he's a bust and you wasted that pick on somebody that didn't really pan out. And I think the Patriots have had certain situations in the last few years where they haven't hit on draft picks, especially on low draft picks. So this one's going to be really important, but I bet they're going to get a rookie quarterback, whether he'll play next year or sit and learn from a veteran quarterback that they'll likely bring in too, or from Mac, however this shakes out. I think they're taking a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see if that is what happens. And it's just so important, like you said, that they hit on this draft. This draft feels so important for them. And they have a lot of flexibility when it comes to free agency this year, too. So I'd really like to see them maximize that opportunity and get those players around whoever they do draft. Because if they do draft a quarterback, like you said, having them develop for a year is definitely a good thing, probably, as opposed to just being thrown into the fire. Which is difficult. And, we all saw how that worked out. So I'd like to see somebody come in, learn for a year and just kind of pick up on this whole new system that the Patriots are going for and learn under somebody like Mac, like you said, or if they decide to bring in somebody else that quarterback can learn from, then they can kind of utilize free agency to bring in other weapons around whoever this future quarterback is going to be. Because I mean, this receiving core, like, is definitely still a huge piece of work. I mean, there's still not a true wide receiver one on this team, although I really like the potential of, like, Demario Douglas. I think he really broke out during this season, and he's somebody who I feel like is worth continuing to keep around and just have as one of those key pieces in that receiving core. But that true number one receiver, it's been a long time since they've had that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as Gerard Mayo said, he's all for developing players. So, in terms of Demario Douglas, that's a perfect example of a guy who's pretty much destined for success if he keeps playing the way he does. But I totally agree with you on that. And I think one of the things that, when you look back on last season, that might have ended up hurting the Patriots more than helping is not re-signing Jacoby Myers. When he goes to Vegas, he ends up having a really great year there. And they signed Juju Smith-Schuster instead, and he didn't pan out the way that I think Bill Belichick was hoping.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely been certain scenarios like that where Belichick takes somebody in the draft and hopes that they'll work out better than they do. And then when it doesn't, people are like, Belichick can't draft because he's had so many guys who ended up being busts. And I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to know for sure how any player is going to pan out in the NFL. I feel like that's just how it is in the draft. Like, you can't expect to always hit on everybody.
100%. I mean, you can do all the research you want, but biggest thing is once they get in the building, keeping them healthy and surrounding them by people that they can learn from. And I also think consistency is such a big thing, as we saw with what Mac Jones didn't have in terms of coaching consistency. It's so important when a guy's in his first couple of years in the league to, at least give them the framework and the foundation to learn, and I think learn in a stable environment.
Yeah, the offensive coordinator changes that they had throughout that time with Mac. How is anybody supposed to learn fully under that type of environment? Because somebody's going to come in and have a different scheme and a different way of doing things. And it's really hard to solidify yourself in that setting. So I don't really like when people try to place all the blame on Mac for his lack of success in New England, because I think there's just been a lot of other factors that led to that. And, another thing with this Patriots team is obviously Belichick being a defensive guy. They've always had a very strong defense. I mean, this defense this season was so good. They just unfortunately couldn't connect on the other side of the ball. So how do you feel about, bringing Mayo into that role now, who also kind of has that as his area of expertise? Still, like, are you concerned that the offensive side of the ball still might be affected negatively because of that?
No, I think that he's taking his time with choosing who he's bringing in as offensive coordinator. He's interviewing a ton of people, bringing candidates back for like second and third interviews before he makes a decision. So I have confidence right now in whoever he chooses to run the offense. That being said, on defense, like obviously, like you said, he came up playing defense in the NFL. He's a defensive minded coach. He coached the defense for a while. So I would say, talking to the defensive players in particular, they love him. They love the energy he brings. They love that he has the familiarity with the organization that he has. Guys are so amped to play for him. And you saw that during his introductory press conference. A bunch of guys that are currently on the team and who recently played for the team showed up at his press conference to support him. So he's definitely got the support there. I think it's a matter of the coaching staff getting filled out and meshing, and it's a fresh start all around for them.
Yeah, it really is. And it's kind of exciting, but it's also kind of nerve-wracking because Patriots fans have not seen a complete fresh start in a while. But if you think about this team, like, they were competitive in a lot of games this year. Like, looking at even scores and watching games, like, it's not like they were getting blown out in all these games. I feel like teams knew when they were facing the Patriots that that was going to be a grind to win that game. And obviously, it didn't work out for them a lot of the time, but it's promising that they definitely were competitive in a lot of those games, and the defense was a big reason for that. So I feel like they're not as much of a complete mess as people might make them out to be. There's just some things that they need to work through, and they can get back to being competitive quicker than I think people think that they can.
Yeah, 100%. I know there's no such thing as moral victories, right? A loss is a loss, a win is a win. And the Patriots, are the kings of saying that in the locker room after they lose a game.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
But they had so many close games where they were on the cusp of winning and they ended up not being able to. And I think one thing I noticed about this group is like they never thought they were a bad team last year. It was just something wasn't clicking. And I respect the fact that they still showed up, worked their tails off at practice, didn't give up, still believed in themselves despite the adversity. Obviously, the season never ended up turning around and going the way that the players hoped it would, but it's a good group of guys. I really enjoyed covering them this past year, like a pretty high character locker room, and I hope a lot of those guys stick around next year because I think there's the right pieces in place in a lot of areas. It just needs a little surge of something.
Yeah, right. And it's definitely very promising to hear you say things like, these guys enjoy being here, because that's something that I think a lot of people were wondering about was, are there guys who are checked out because of how poorly the season was going and their record? And obviously that can be demoralizing to a team. Like if, you're consistently losing games, but it seems to me, based on what you're saying, that that wasn't really the case as much for the guys in this locker room, that they weren't really as much like, I'm so over this as people might have thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're losing, going to practice sucks, going to the facility sucks. Like, you want to feel like you're playing for something tangible at the end of the day, whether it's a Super Bowl, a chance for the playoffs. And the way the Patriots got eliminated from playoff contention was a little early this season. So they kind of knew what their fate was like. So I think that all the more just shows the character of those guys, because it's really easy to check out in a situation like that. And I really don't think that most of those guys did.
Yeah, that's promising for sure for moving forward. And I know obviously for you, you've been covering the Patriots for a while now. And, when did you kind of initially start covering the team?
I started covering the team in 2016, right after I graduated college. And I was working for the Boston Herald. I was covering news and sports. And I started off that year, I think, at OTAs, and continued covering the team throughout it. They just so happened to make it to the Super Bowl that year. Ended up playing that big game in early 2017 against the Falcons and won the Super Bowl. So
Talk,
it's a
talk
good
about a
first year.
legendary Super Bowl to be covering.
Yeah, my first Super Bowl, that was crazy. And, I was a one-man band, shooting and editing and writing everything by myself down there for 10 days. But I was so excited to be in that environment, and I couldn't believe how that game went. That I think even at the end of the week when I was exhausted, the fuel from the game and the momentum and the way that it all shook out and the excitement around it just like kept me alive and functioning. By the end of the week, once I got home, I was I think I need to sleep for a week straight, but it was awesome.
That's a really cool experience for you.
Yeah, I mean, because of the Patriots' success when I was early in my career, I got to experience a lot of great things. I mean, I went to 3 straight Super Bowls. I think I worked 6 or 7 straight AFC championships. It's unprecedented when you look back on that, because you realize in hindsight that I'll probably never cover a team with that level of success and a quarterback like Tom Brady ever again.
No, unfortunately, that dynasty was so cool, but we're probably never going to see that again. It was fun while it lasted, but it's just so hard to just do what they did. That's why it's so incredible to really think about it back now.
100%. And looking back on it, there's a lot of great stories, great memories. I built a lot of good relationships with people all throughout the organization, because I spent 2 years working for the Patriots organization after my first job, and it was great. That's awesome. Seems like a lifetime ago at this point.
Yeah, right. At what point in your career did you decide to, make the transition from covering the Patriots for the team to kind of wanting to move into covering more teams? Because I know now you kind of cover more of the Boston teams at NESN.
Yeah, I'm covering all the Boston sports teams in this job, and I have a golf show that I do in a ski show. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of everything right now. I would say after 2 years as the Patriots team sideline reporter, they won another Super Bowl, and it was just time to keep growing. It was time for a change, and just so happened I ended up leaving not long after Tom Brady made his decision to leave. So you could call that good timing or bad timing. I don't know how you want to look at it.
Yeah, right.
But it's been good. I think having a bit of versatility in terms of being able to cover all the different sports has been great. The Celtics have been on a good run the last couple of years. They've built up a good team. There's been a lot of changes within that organization, but they've still been making playoff runs. The Bruins have been fun. I mean, you look at last season, best record in the NHL. I mean,
Such a
Red,
disappointing playoff run for them, though. There was so much hype. Like, I thought last year was going to be the year for them. And then
oh,
it was just like such a letdown again that Bruins fans are so used to dealing with at this point. And even Celtics, too. Like, it's been a long time since they've actually won it all. And it's like both of those teams are very competitive teams during the regular season, as we've seen, but then they just can't get the job done in the playoffs. But I really like how both of those teams are looking again this year.
listen, that day after the Bruins lost last year,
Yeah.
I was in the office, and it was one of the darkest days in the office I've ever been a part of because, people, especially the people working on the hockey broadcast, they're grinding out that entire regular season. Everybody's saying this is the Bruins year, this is the Bruins year, this is the time. We got a stacked team. It's, Bergeron's potential last year. Like, this is the team that's going to do it. So to see them go out the way they did, and it's not funny, I'm just laughing thinking about how dark that next day was because we were all like, oh, well, hopefully they'll have a chance next year. But last year was a really special team that they had.
It was. Yeah, it really was. And obviously, it was a year that felt like it was going to be the end of an era for some of the guys on the team that we didn't know if they were going to come back or not. And so now I'm sitting here watching this team and it's like, okay, well, they have overall like a younger team than they had last year and they're looking pretty good right now. But are there any concerns you have about this team overall, when it comes to the postseason in terms of, just generally being younger and lack of postseason experience because they've lost some of those veterans that were on that team?
I think they're being led by a really good coach in Montgomery. The
I like him a lot.
players seem to really like playing for him. I have a lot of faith in his leadership. And then you look at the way Marshy's filled in after Bergeron retired, and he's having a heck of a season right now. And I think he's leading by example for the rest of the team. Obviously, nothing replaces experience when it comes to playing in the playoffs, but I have faith in this group. So I don't have a ton of concerns. The biggest thing is, of course, once you get to the playoffs, every single game matters and every single game counts. And can you sustain that momentum once the playoffs actually start? Because as we saw last year, you can have the best record in the league. You can, have a completely stacked roster. And if you can't win and get out of the first round, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, and it also a lot of times it depends on your matchup, who you have, because some teams just
Exactly.
get hot at the right time, and that to me is kind of what happened last year with that Florida team. I was like, this was probably the worst matchup that the Bruins could have gotten because that team was on fire, and I mean, I just saw the way that they played in the rest of the postseason, and I was like, yeah, I mean, they're just I thought they had a good chance to win it all. Like after they beat the Bruins, I was like, nobody wanted to play the Bruins in the playoffs last year. Then they get past the Bruins and they're on this like all time high. And so I feel like your matchup is a big part of that too. But I mean, Pasternak obviously having another fantastic season too. And it's been kind of cool to watch some of these younger guys get their opportunity to play this year and kind of break out into the scene just to kind of see a little bit about like what this team has going for them moving forward. And I think we can be excited about a lot of the young talent that they have that are going to kind of set the foundation for the future here.
100%. I mean, it's like you said, a young team, a deep team, and I think that works in their favor. This could be the year. We'll see. It's like I almost don't want to speak too soon because we all saw how last year went, but the biggest thing is hopefully they can learn from their experiences. And I'm sure that early playoff exit last year haunts all of those players' minds who are still on that team. I can't even imagine. There's so many expectations and then you fall short. It's almost hard to probably go out in public in Boston for a couple of weeks after something like that happens. So
Yeah, right?
oh my gosh. Yeah.
I mean, they're fun. They're definitely a fun team to watch. I think there's a lot of guys out there who are hungry on that team, like you said, and from last year, they don't want to end up in that same situation as last year. And I mean, people do believe that the President's Trophy is cursed, so
Yeah,
people don't want to see them winning that President's Trophy again. And ideally, that won't happen, and then they'll hopefully go into the playoffs with a little bit less pressure on them because there was so much pressure on them last year. It was almost the expectation that they were going to win last year with everything they did during the regular season. So I feel like
yeah,
it's almost better for them to not have this unreal regular season like they had last year and kind of be more in the mix of where everybody else is because then they won't be looked at as like this is the team that, should win this year and more like a this team is really good and could make a big run, but hopefully it takes some of that like internal pressure off of the guys.
100%. I remember last year during that first round of the playoffs, I was interviewing some of the Panthers players one morning before they had their morning skate here. And I remember asking them, like, okay, you're going up against a team that has the best record in the NHL for the regular season. The expectations are really high for them. Like, do you feel a sense of pressure going up against them? And that team was so confident and poised, and they really backed up their belief in themselves on the ice. So, as you said earlier, I mean, once you saw the way that the Panthers played after the first round and throughout the playoffs, it was like, okay, if there's a team that's going to beat the Bruins, at least they sustained playing well, and it makes a loss a little bit better if there's a such thing as that.
Yeah, it made it like a little bit less embarrassing to see that
For
they
sure.
continued to play well and they were beating other teams after the Bruins. It almost like made me feel a little bit better about like, okay, they just are super hot at the right time. And there was just, it's seemingly nothing that we could really do. But what really frustrated me was the Bruins had that. They had that series. There were a couple opportunities that they had to close out that series and they couldn't do it. And that was the part to me that was the biggest thing was they squandered a couple big opportunities where they could have ended that series. And that is kind of the thing that, again, I'll be looking out for is like just be able to close out because that was the biggest thing for them last year.
100%. We'll see how it goes, but I mean, here we are, All-Star Week right now. It's
Yeah.
February 1st.
Yeah.
Season's flying by.
I know, right? And even the Celtics too. I mean, they're having a fantastic season, and I think Joe Mazzulla has been great. I think a lot of people have been giving him a hard time, particularly after the way things went down last year with just their playoff struggles and going down 3-0 to the Heat, which was obviously not ideal. And then coming back this year, best team in the East and looking like the team again that other teams might not want to face come playoff time. Obviously, the trade deadline is quickly approaching. Is there anything that you'd like to see the Celtics do at the trade deadline to improve this team? Because I know there's been names thrown around out there that the Celtics could be interested in maybe pursuing, but I've also seen people say maybe they should just not do anything because they have great chemistry right now and we don't want to ruin that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think keep the team the way that it is and don't ruin the chemistry. I mean, hey, Brad Stevens might think differently than I do. He's around the team day in and day out versus me, who's watching the games, but I'm not covering every single game in this job that I have right now. But I think if it's not broke, why fix it? I really do like this group, and they had a lot of changes this offseason. Seems like people are gelling together, so maybe don't try and disrupt the chemistry. I think in basketball, chemistry is such an important thing. I mean, in all sports it is, but especially in basketball. And you also don't want like egos colliding and the kind of things that we've seen with other teams. So I think I like this group the way it is. Let's just ride it out and see. I think they'll
Yeah,
probably beat the Lakers by like 50 points tonight because
I hope so.
I think there's no AD or LeBron playing.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I mean, they should. They should. This was the problem the Celtics had last year, though, was they would play down to competition and they would lose to teams that they should have beaten. That's something I will say that's different about them this year. They're not playing down to competition as much, and they are winning those games they should be winning, and they're closing out games a lot better as opposed to last year when they would have lost a lot of those close games at the end that they're now figuring out ways to win. So that's something I really like about this Celtics team. And going into the season, I was concerned about the bench a little bit. I said, does this team have enough bench depth to be able to get them to where they want to go, which is the NBA Finals again? Or do they need help there? And a lot of these guys off the bench have really stepped up significantly this year, more so than I thought they would, like, Pritchard and Hauser, Cornette, guys like that who I didn't expect to step up as much as they are. I've seen people say we should acquire another big man maybe off the bench just to kind of help out because obviously with Al and Porzingis, Al doesn't play every day, and Porzingis, we don't really know with his health if he's going to be able to stay healthy. So, do we need more help from that standpoint? But then it's a matter of, okay, if they bring somebody in, then people have to remember they're going to have to move guys. And is it worth moving guys that are adding to what's going on right now just to get kind of more of a safety net?
I know, and that's the big question and the tough question, but I think you keep things the way they are. If it's up to me, that's what I would do, because I think in the past you've moved things around too much and then it gets more complicated. Again, I'm a full believer, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I mean, if you can fine tune things, within the team to make it better, that's great, but I don't think they should mess with it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a report saying them and the Suns are interested in Jay Sean Tate. Who knows how much, again, any of this is true because it's hard for me to just believe everything that I see on Twitter because I don't
Yeah.
obviously always know. And maybe they are interested, but interested to me doesn't necessarily always mean they're definitely going to go out and aggressively pursue somebody. Interested could just mean, okay, let's see what this might look like for us if we were to make that kind of move for a player like that. And there's a lot of guys out there. That's a good example of guys who I think could definitely provide value from the standpoint of just being another depth option. But I really trust Pritchard and Hauser to continue to play the way that they are. I think consistency is a big thing I'm going to be looking out for in this next part of the season as we approach kind of, this last few months of the regular season, as crazy as that is to say, because like you said, it's flying by. So consistency for me is going to be a big thing. But like, I really like how this is going. And Tatum and Brown, it seems like this group is really elevating their games because Tatum, like, I mean, he just looks a lot more confident right now than he has in a long time. And Jaylen Brown, I mean, he's playing like his best basketball I've seen him play in a long time. And I'm worried that trying to add somebody else in and kind of messing with everything might throw that off a little bit. And I mean, obviously Tatum and Brown are hungry for a championship right now, and I don't want to mess with that if we don't have to.
I agree. I think the Celtics have to do their due diligence, in the next bit of time before the trade deadline. But I mean, they'd be doing themselves a disservice if they didn't. But the matter is whether they actually pull the trigger on making a move or not. And unless it's some game changing amazing deal that you can get for a star, I just don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, Porzingis and Holiday have just been huge additions to this team as it is. Like those two guys have made such an impactful difference already that to me, like those arguably could be like the trade deadline moves that they're like, we made moves for these two big name players already before the season and they're making a huge impact for us. Like, do we really need anybody else? Like, Holiday's making a huge difference on the defensive side of the ball as we knew he would. And, obviously trading Marcus Smart was sad for Celtics fans. It definitely hit home. Like, I thought he was going to finish his career in a Celtics uniform. But looking back on it now, it's kind of what needed to happen because this team is just playing on a different level right now. And I think, Jaylen and Tatum both are kind of at the point now where they're really comfortable with where this team is at. And it shows in their play. They just both look like they're so confident and they're really feeding off of these guys that they have. And the season Derek White's having, I just think has been an absolute game changer for this team also.
It really has. And I think when you look at Drew Holiday, for example, he's bringing in a lot of experience.
Yep.
into the organization. And I think he's kind of one of those guys that other guys in the locker room can look at as, yeah, he's a great player, but he's also a character guy. And I think, that can be the glue for an organization and everybody meshing together too.
Yeah, absolutely. So excited for them. I trust Brad Stevens 100%. He hasn't really done anything yet that I've been really mad or upset about that he's done. I
Mhm.
think he just knows this organization inside and out and this team, and it helps that he knows, the coaching side of things and is now in this front office position of having to make those types of decisions. And I really trust that he'll do what's best. And I think there could be people out there who might be a little rattled if they don't do anything at the trade deadline, but I would also understand completely why they don't, because this team is just playing very good basketball right now, and it's hard to mess with something that's that good.
When we talk about things like this, I'm like, I'm just happy that it's not my job to decide these things, because around here, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Right. You can't do anything right if
No,
you're
and
a
if you
team
don't
that's
pull the
sponsored.
trigger, yeah, like if you don't pull the trigger and you don't do anything, and fans are going to be like, well, why didn't you try to get this guy? But then if you do get that guy and you have to trade away some people and some assets, and it doesn't work out, people are like, that was the worst trade ever. So you got to balance it out a bit.
Yeah, right. Um, well, yeah, I do have to ask you one more question that I actually was requested to ask you because I have a couple friends who are big golf fans. So
Okay.
they wanted me to ask you what your favorite thing is about covering golf.
I would say that I love getting to see different courses. I mean, because I've been covering golf for like 6 or 7 years now, I've gotten to, go to some really cool destinations, which is great. Um, Also, there's some really good storylines, and the whole Live PGA merger situation has been really interesting. Seeing guys go over to the Live Tour, seeing the way that that's been shaking out. It's been a really intriguing time, and I think the golf world right now is shifting a lot, and we've seen people become more accepting towards the Live Tour. Um, PGA is kind of changing their stance on things associated with Live. It's a really cool time right now. So I would say that's my favorite part. Like the traveling is great, but also just working in that industry during such a pivotal time is really cool.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably so fun. I mean, I used to play golf when I was younger. I haven't played in a long time, but I used to go to golf camp because my dad sent me because he was like, "Oh, I think this is something you'd be interested in doing." So I was playing for a while and then just never kept up with it. So I would probably be super rusty if I tried to play now. But it's interesting that you kind of landed on that side of things, kind of covering golf because it's definitely a more obscure sport.
Yeah, it is. And I think as a woman, like playing golf, even if it's just, like having a beginner skill set, you can hit the ball, you can play 18 holes. It's such a good skill to have, not only for networking and business and whatnot, but it's really fun when you get out there with a good group and you can have great conversations. Like I said, great for networking, great for business. I think we've been seeing more and more women get involved in golf, and obviously it's not an easy sport to pick up, but it's really rewarding and it's a fun hobby. So I'm all for growing the game of golf for women just as like a hobby too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's so much fun to just be out there. It's a great way to just do something fun with friends or family or whoever and just kind of go out there with a foursome and hang out on the golf course and, get some holes in. It's a lot of fun. My fiance goes all the time. He like loves golf. So he's like always out there. He hates this time of year because he hasn't been able to golf in a while and it's like bothering him, but it's like fun for people.
100%. The best part is, I have some friends whose husbands or boyfriends play golf like any free second they get in the summer. And my friends will come to me complaining like, "Oh, so and so like is golfing again. He's not going to be home until late tonight. This and that." And I'm laughing because I'm like, I'm kind of the wrong person to complain to about that, because cover golf. I'm at golf courses a lot, so I can understand the draw.
Yeah, right. That's so funny. Yeah, you're like, I mean, I can give you kind of a different perspective, but that's
I can be like,
awesome.
I can tell you exactly how long things are going to take. Like they're not playing an 8-hour round, sweetie.
Yeah, right. That's so funny. Yeah, it
Yeah,
seems like you
damn it, Meredith.
yeah. It seems like you really enjoy that, and that's cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. We just taped some shows in Bermuda a couple months ago, and it was
Oh
really
wow.
cool getting to go to Bermuda for the first time. It's great getting to go to warm places when it's pretty cold here too. I mean, even now, as we just talked about in the beginning of the podcast, like I don't think we've seen full sun in Boston in 10 days. So
Yeah.
anywhere I can go and get some sunlight would be great this time of year.
Yeah, right? Honestly though, this is such a
Vitamin
depressing
D.
time of year, like I said.
I mean, I'm
But
looking out the window right now and it's gray out and it's cool.
yeah, we're definitely starting to see the days get a little bit longer though. Like slowly it's starting to get dark later. So baby steps on that too.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It just makes things a little better when you can go outside. It's not freezing. You got the sunshine because the sun at least makes it warmer this time
Yes.
of year and more pleasant to go for a walk instead of just being confined to your
Yeah, right.
apartment when you're not at work.
I know, right? Exactly. But
Yeah.
but yeah, this was awesome. I really appreciate you hopping on here with me. It was so much fun.
Of course, thanks for having me. And anytime you want to talk sports, give me
Yeah, no, I definitely will be hitting you up again for sure.
awesome. Thanks, Gabby.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks so much, everybody, as always, for tuning into the show. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will catch you all next time. Let's go, Celtics, by the way. Hope they crush the Lakers.